A persona is a manifestation of an aspect of a personality, essentially a mask, used to face challenges. The term persona comes from Latin meaning mask. In the game, they take the form of gods or entity from mythology depending on the user. A lot of people confuse them to be our true self, however, it's more of an aspect of you, or as the game describes, your other self.
I am thou, thou art I. From the sea of thy soul I cometh. I am Orpheus, master of strings.
The concept of persona originates from the work of Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist who I will be referencing a lot today, but as always for this kind of listicle video, I'll keep things simple and stick to the basic. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the social mask we present to the world. Jung described it as a kind of mask designed on the one hand to make a definite impress upon others, and on the others to conceal the true nature of the individual. In other words, it's the role we play in societies, our public self, which can be very different from how we truly feel inside. That said, we all have multiple personas depending on the situation, like how you act at work versus how you are with your close friends. Since persona is how we consciously choose to act, it is located over here in this diagram, which I will also be referencing a lot today. However, even though I'm basing it on the Jungian psychology diagram, I want to be clear that the way I'm organizing it lean more toward Persona the game than the original theory. In the Persona series, reverse personas are basically the corrupted version of the original personas. They often have altered color schemes and are typically used by boss characters in battles. This concept originated from Persona 2 duology, but similar ideas appear in other games. Adachi Persona's Makatsu Izanagi is essentially a twisted version of Izanagi. Another example is the persona summoned by the shadow protagonist during the event of episode Aegis, whose personas mirror the cis member persona in a reverse form. The term reverse in this case comes from tarot cards readings, where the position of the cards can change its meaning. When the tarot cards appear reversed, it can indicate that the power is weakened, blocked, or has an opposite meaning compared to its upright position. In the Persona series, however, a reverse persona typically represents the direct opposite of its original form rather than the weakened state. That said, since a reverse persona is still a persona, it belongs here on the diagram. You can think of it like an asshole mask you put on when you want to be a dick to someone. Shadows are born from suppressed human emotion. While they often link to negative feeling, they aren't always purely negative. In the game, Shadow typically appear as black ghoul-like creature, but in Persona 5, they take the form of the mythical beings and deities instead. The concept of shadows actually dated back to Persona 1, where Maki's split personality, Agi, served as an early example. Though the term shadow wasn't used at the time, from Persona 3 onward though, shadows are said to originate from Nyx, a colossal alien entity that crashed into Earth in prehistoric times. This crash caused Nyx's psyche to separate from its body and wander the planet. Without diving too deep, a significant portion of this psyche merged with the collective unconscious, the shared mental framework of all living beings. As a result, every human psyche contains a fragment of Nyx, which manifests as a shadow. Now, before we get into Jungian psychology behind shadows, let's break down the different types, starting with the shadow self. The shadow self is best known from Persona 4, where it represents the negative emotion or repressed aspect of a person.
An old tradition, the pride of the town. Screw it all!
How dare you say that?
But it's how I feel. Isn't that right, other me?
You're a liar! You are not me!
And the power starts to surge.
If someone fails to accept their shadow as part of themselves, it's transformed into a monstrous version of them. However, the idea of shadow self actually began in Persona 2. Despite the name, the Persona 2 version is more of a cognition hybrid, as these shadows are created from the rumor that taken physical form. That said, the core theme of accepting one shadow remains, just like in Persona 4. Interestingly, Persona 2 shadow self can even use reverse persona. Anyway, Jung's concept of the shadow referred to hidden side of the psyche, the part of ourself that we reject or suppress. He described the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be. These are often traits we don't want to acknowledge, like anger, fear, jealousy, or cowardice. But ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. Instead, they linger in the unconscious as the personal shadow. To put it simply, when compared to persona, shadows are born from repressed unconscious thought, things we push away. Meanwhile, a persona is a conscious personality we create to interact with the world. In a way, there are two sides of the same coin, but one is created from unconsciousness and the other's consciousness. That said, just like with persona, a lot of people seem to think the shadow is the true self, which, let me tell you, it's not. And it doesn't matter if the shadow itself claims it is. I mean, are you really gonna believe those self-important goof? But don't worry, I'll explain what the true self really is after I go over all the important elements of the psyche. Golden shadows, more commonly known as wolf hands, are special shadows found in Persona 3 Tartarus and Persona 4 Personal Dungeon. These shadows immediately try to flee upon spotting the player. Even if you manage to engage them in battle, they're tricky to take down unless you exploit their weaknesses. And if they aren't defeated within a few turns, they will escape. However, if you do manage to defeat one, you are rewarded with valuable loot and large amount of EXP. Again, this concept ties back to Jungian psychology. The way golden shadows run away and provide large rewards mirror the idea of the golden shadow in Jung works. Like regular shadow, the golden shadow represents aspects of ourselves that are hidden in the unconscious. However, unlike the usual dark and negative trait we suppress, Jung pointed out that not everything in the shadow is bad. There are also positive traits, talents, virtue, or desire that we unknowingly cast aside. Modern Jungian refer to this as the golden shadow, representing untapped potential or hidden strength that, if embraced, can help us grow. That said, in Persona 5, wolf hands are absent since our shadow now take on the form of mythological beings. But does that mean the concept is missing entirely? Well, not exactly. Persona 5 Shadow Futaba actually fit the idea of a golden shadow quite well. She embodied the side of Futaba that knows she isn't truly at fault and recognized that she was used as a scapegoat.
Think hard. Was that suicide note real? Would the mother you loved so much truly have written that? Did she ever say such horrible things to you?
No! She scolded me whenever I had tantrums, but she cared for me.
Then what about the suicide note?
A total lie!
You were used. They forged her suicide note and laid the blame of her death upon you. They trampled all over your young heart.
Cognition was first introduced in Persona 5, refer to how humans perceive the world, essentially what they believe to be reality. This perception can shape location, object, and even people. While Persona 5 is the first game to explicitly explain this concept, its roots go way back in the series. One of the most significant examples comes from Persona 2 Duology, where Nyarlathotep places a curse that makes any widely believed rumor become reality. For this video though, we focus specifically on cognitive beings, people who exist purely as a manifestation of someone else's perception. Examples include cognitive aunt in Kamoshida Palace and Akechi copies in Shido Palace. But really, this applies to nearly everyone created by a palace ruler. So, what set cognition apart from persona and shadow? To put it simply, cognition is how you perceive the world around you. while persona and shadow exist within you. Now that we talk about cognition, let's dive into the gods and the final bosses of Persona series. A common mistake people make is assuming these entities are just shadow, which is close, but they actually belong to a class of their own. So what's the difference between a shadow and a god in the Persona series? It's all come down to how many people are involved in their creation. Shadow are strictly born from an individual repressing emotion, but the gods and many final bosses, they emerge from collective repression, also known as the collective shadow, the shared belief, fears, and emotion of the masses. Take Yadabov for example. It was created from the collective unconscious of people who fear thinking for themselves and prefer a world of control. Erebus, on the other hand, emerged from humanity's deep-rooted desire for death. Even the so-called shadow protagonist from Persona 3 Fest episode Aegis isn't actually a shadow. It's fit this category better since it's formed from the collective repressed emotion of Cease. That said, while these beings are born from the collective unconscious, in the game, they eventually materialize or merge with reality when enough people believe in them. That's why some god exist both in the material conscious world and the unconscious realm.
It's in the back, to your left. You know which way is left? The side you don't hold your chopsticks in.
I know. Jeez.
Why are you staring, Nanako?
Now, you'll never talk about the palaces or gods spontaneously forming from thought, but he did emphasize that the psyche actively constructs reality. He wrote, "The psyche is, like every vital process, a continually creative act. The psyche created everyday reality." And while this might sound abstract, we have seen real-world examples of mass belief shaping reality in a strange way. Take the dancing plague of 1518 in France. It started when one woman began dancing uncontrollably in the street. Within days, hundreds joined in, unable to stop. Some reportedly danced to the point of exhaustion or even death. There were no clear medical explanation. This was a case of psychogenic illness, where collective belief and social influence led to real physical consequences. For a more modern example, remember the Slender Man phenomenons? What started as the fictional character in an online horror contest in 2009 quickly spread like wildfires. People began claiming to see Slender Man in real life, and the myth took on a life of its own. In both cases, a shared belief, whether fear, hysteria, or superstition, became real in a tangible way. And that's exactly how the final bosses in Persona come to exist. They are the manifestation of humanity's deepest collective thought and emotion.
Why is everything... The whole world is a product of cognition, not just the metaverse. It can be freely remade. The same goes for you and everyone else.
Dude, Mona!
Mona-chan!
This can't be happening!
Soon a new world will come. One where mankind isn't held captive.
Now, some entities in Persona don't fit neatly into categories we'll talk about today, and since Atlus hasn't given them an official classification, let's just call this next section hybrid for now. First up is METIS from Persona 3 episode Aegis. While the game never explicitly states that she's a shadow, it's heavily implied that she is Aegis shadow. But here's where things get tricky. METIS can summon a persona. This is strange because Atlus has also established that Shadow shouldn't be able to use persona, since they are, in a way, already a persona. This is also the case when it's come to TEDDIE from Persona 4, as he is a shadow that can summon persona. So, how does this work exactly? Once again, Junkian psychology give us an answer. Apart from Persona and Shadow, there's another key concept that the modern Persona series left out called the ego. To put it simply, the ego is your sense of self, the you that you believe you are. This is different from the persona, which is the version of you that you present to the world. In Jung theory, the persona is a function of the ego. It's a mask that the ego created to interact with societies. Bringing this back to Persona, it only makes sense for us to believe that both Metis and TEDDIE are shadow that develop an ego and eventually a sense of self until Atlas explained otherwise. This is what allowed them to summon a persona. That said, Metis and TEDDIE aren't the first shadows capable of summoning a persona. That title goes to Agi, a split personality of Magi Sonomura, which was able to summon a persona called Pandora. Anyway, I'll place Metis and TEDDIE into the hybrid section to keep things organized. Now, after everything we have talked about, we can finally answer what exactly is our true self. You might think it's just the ego, right? But not quite. See, the ego only exists in your conscious mind. It's simply who you believe yourself to be. But let's say someone irritated you. Deep down, you feel angry even though you think you're a calm person. That hidden anger you don't usually acknowledge, that's your shadow. It's the side of you that you keep hidden, even from yourself. However, even if you're boiling inside, at work, you probably stay polite and professional in front of your boss. That's your persona, the social mask you wear. So, which of this is your true self? Your ego, your shadow, or your persona? The real answer is all of them. According to Carl Jung, your true self, the fully realized self, include every aspect: your conscious belief, ego, your hidden emotion, shadow, and your social roles, persona. If your persona take control, you become a hollow person shaped entirely by others' expectation. If your ego take full control, you lose touch with deeper instinct and adaptabilities. And if your shadow dominates, you become overwhelmed by emotion, simply reacting rather than acting consciously. Becoming your true best self means embracing all these parts. It means recognizing your shadow, understanding your ego, and consciously managing your persona. Only by integrating them can you become truly whole.
I will carve my own path for myself. I refuse to accept a reality concocted by someone else, stuck under their control for the rest of my days. So what? That's the path I chose. All you have to do is stick to your guns and challenge Maruki. Or are you really so spineless that you'd fold over some bullshit trivial threat on my life? Then you already know what needs to be done.
Now, let's talk about my most recent favorite characters, ERINA. ERINA is the manifestation of Toshiro Kusukabe, repressed will to rebel, taking the form of his high school friend, Eri Nasuhara. She was created after Toshiro became inspired to defy his father and fiancé following the Phantom Thief televised call-out of Masayoshi Shido. At first, this made ERINA a cognition, a physical embodiment of Toshiro's perception and emotion. However, as the story unfolds, we learn that her true form is Ernesto, Toshiro's persona. This means she actually a hybrid. But unlike Metis and TEDDIE, ERINA doesn't summon a persona. Instead, she is the persona. She has the ability to shift between her cognition form, ERINA, and her true persona form, Ernesto. So why does Ernesto take the form of Eri? The answer is simple. Toshiro deeply admired and has strong feeling for her. That connection shaped the way his persona manifests. But if you haven't played the game yet, I highly recommend picking it up, especially if it goes on sale. The bond between Toshiro and ERINA is honestly one of my favorite, even rivaling the relationship of the main cast.
It's because I'm so useless. I've caused you so much pain. I'm sorry, but even someone like me has their principles. I want to protect everyone that has taught me to fight. I want to protect their spirit. I want to support those who need it and be willing to fight their battles with them. So please, lend me your strength. Stand with us one more time! ERINA!
Velvet Room residents have to be some of the most mysterious beings in the entire Persona series. There are all sort of discussion and debate about what they really are, but first, let's talk about the creation of Igor, the current master of the Velvet Room. Igor was originally a handmade doll crafted by a mysterious person, brought to life through a magical ritual. Now, one thing we know for sure is that the Velvet Room attendants are created by Igor. The strongest argument suggesting that the attendants' cognition come from Persona 3 Portable, where Igor asks the player, when you think of another person who resides in the Velvet Room, what do you see?
Do you recall when I mentioned another resident of this room? Tell me, when you think of this person, what do you see? I see. Then let's bring him out for a proper introduction.
My name is Theodore, but please, feel free to call me Theo. It's a pleasure to meet you.
This makes them sound like they could be cognitions. However, they seem to be more of a hybrid. Unlike typical cognition, they can summon personas and move between the conscious and unconscious realm, something a cognition created by an individual wouldn't be able to do. So, what do you think? Do the Velvet Room attendants fall into the categories of cognitions, or are they something else entirely? Let me know in the comments. Next, we have Morgana, whose origins are complicated. And yes, I played the game, but even then the explanation is still pretty vague. In Persona 5, Morgana himself says,
I really remember everything. When this place was about to be taken over, my master gathered the last traces of mankind's hope. He mustered up his remaining strength to make me.
If you take Morgana's words literally, that means he's the embodiment of hope within the collective unconscious, taking form and gaining sense of self. But here's the problem. Since Igor was involved in his creation, and Morgana wasn't naturally born like a god, that's actually make him more similar to the Velvet Room attendants. So, in a way, Morgana is some kind of a hybrid between Velvet Room entities and a god. But for simplicity's sake, I'll place him with other Velvet Room entities. After playing the games, I just have to talk about this one. Let's dive into Metaphor Refantasio, Atlus' new series and its unique concept, Archetype. In the game, archetypes are heroic figures born from ancient magic, serving as powerful tools for allies in battles. While they function similarly to personas, there's a key difference. Instead of summoning an external entity, characters transform into their archetype or wear them like armor. Jung originally used the term archetypes to describe universal fundamental images and themes that appear throughout human history. They are inherited patterns in the collective unconscious, predefined way in which human experiences take shape. Some classic examples include the hero, the brave figure who goes on the journey to overcome challenges; the trickster, a mischievous figure that disrupts and challenges norms; the wise old man, a mentor who provides guidance and wisdom. At first, these archetypes aren't fully formed images, but when they interact with a human mind, they manifest as symbols and characters in myth, dream, and story. That's why across culture, we see similar legends of heroes, wise mentor, trickster, and dark adversary. As I mentioned earlier, Metaphor Refantasio take this concept and apply them beautifully. His characters don't just embody an archetype symbolically, they physically transform into them in battles.
Heroism lies in the soul that stands firm against its fears. Power awaits thy command. The time is come to awaken the hero within. Engrave thy very heart.
Now, if you enjoyed this kind of explanation video, don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I've been making this for about 3 months now, and if you're not sure what to watch next, why not find out the true identity of this egghead boy?